welcome back to Weatherford Daze. I'm Rachel, this is Jason, and we are thrilled to welcome you to our new series for the month of June.
What were we going to call it? Thought about it, didn't we?
We are going to be discussing stage productions this month, all by the very illustrious, famous, whatever you want to call him, Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber, OBE. Webber. Yeah. If you go to order of the British Empire, they have to call you Sir all the time, which is weird. So.
But just as a little bit of a backstory to why I wanted to do this, I found the Phantom of the Opera, the CDs, actually, from the original, I guess, Sarah Brightman's performance, Michael Crawford, when we got them from the library when I was in my early teens. And I don't know why, but they just captured my heart. I had never really, I guess I had heard like the Phantom, the theme song before, but I had never heard all of the music. And when I got those and listened to them from the library, I just then spent the next several months continually rechecking them and memorizing all of the lyrics through the entire thing and just all of the different parts. And yes, my little 14, 15-year-old self could hit that high E on the, the famous song.
I don't doubt it. And our daughter is also doing that in the house all the time. I've
kind of lost the ability to hit that, but I used to be able to do it. It was so much fun.
I believe it. Did you, have you seen, when did you see the musical for the first time?
I went to see I went to see it performed on stage in college. So right around 2000. And
was it TPAC?
Yeah, at TPAC. Which actually my college ID, you could get like discounted tickets.
Nice.
So I'm pretty sure that was one that I got discounted tickets for. The first Andrew Lloyd Webber play that I got to see was
Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
And I got to see that one in Memphis before I went to college. So I was 16, 17 when I saw that. But that was another one that after I discovered Phantom, then I went on to Joseph and Cats.
Did you see Cats on VHS or on PBS? I saw Cats on PBS one time.
I think I have seen Cats.
Or maybe I was having a dream while I had the flu.
Time ago.
That's what it feels like to me watching that.
Cats was not one that we're going to have to, before we actually cover it, we're going to have to watch that one again because and not the new one.
Absolutely
but
not.
Actually finding the stage, because I've never been to see that one. The other ones I've been to see. And then we're going to have to watch Jesus Christ Superstar again too, because the only time I never got the music to that one, and the only time I've ever watched it was we watched it together when we first got together. I think before we got married, you talked me into watching that.
Was it that or Last Temptation?
I think we watched Jesus Christ Superstar. We found like a YouTube production of it or something.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah. But that one, I don't have the song stuck in my head. I don't know it. So we'll have to, I remember not being highly impressed.
That's the one that's stuck in my head. The song, well, we can talk about it when we talk about it.
Yeah.
But the thing that gets on my nerves is that it's not theologically sound even, and you'll find that out when we talk about it. I think you'll have to hold me back.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I really, it'll be interesting talking about Andrew Lloyd Webber, just because he does take these things that have a lot of basis. There's foundation to it. It's like for this one tonight, which is going to be Phantom of the Opera. Did we say that? I think we did.
It's inside your mind.
If not, it's, people have already seen the title, so they know what we're talking about.
The thumbnail
Yeah.
tells the tale.
But that's the thing, I memorized the music from Andrew Lloyd Webber's, and then I went and I found the book at the library.
Was it the original Gaston Leroux?
Well, I mean, it translated.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I read it in English, but yeah, the one by Gaston Leroux. And then I proceeded to find, let's see, there's a Sherlock Holmes version of it, like with Phantom of the Opera and Sherlock Holmes.
I want to read that one. You need to find that one for me, because ever since you mentioned it, I was like,
that one's fun.
Ooh.
But it was really interesting to go from, the play to then the book and just see the differences there. And I think that
it's striking.
It is very striking. But for tonight, I have had so much fun in the past day going onto YouTube and looking at people's analysis and different stuff, which has been a lot of fun. And whenever you're going to put something on YouTube, it's kind of nice to see what other people have been doing on YouTube.
But sometimes the downside of that, and I noticed that when me and William were doing our podcast, is I had to be careful not to ape other people's, opinions or their style, and kind of forge my own path. And that's hard to do.
I don't really have a difficult time with that. I very rarely ever see something that somebody else has said and go, I 100% agree with that. So,
right.
Kind of highly opinionated on my own ear.
No doubt. I'm not gonna...
Thanks.
Well, it's perfect.
You're like, yeah, that's true.
But it's perfect for this kind of, discussion, video essay, kind of blog kind of thing, to have an opinion.
But it's also nice just to kind of go, what have other people covered and what can I cover that kind of maybe brings a different spin on it. And that's the thing, you get your usual people like Cinema Therapy has covered it. And I was actually a little bit disappointed in Cinema Therapy's take. Of course, they just covered the movie, which admittedly is the worst of anything that has been done on Phantom of the Opera, the new movie, which it's a movie adaptation of Andrew Lloyd Webber's.
Oh, okay, yeah. I have seen some of the adaptations of the book in silent film, and there was a couple of film versions, 2 or 3, 4 film versions done. I've seen a couple of them, and some of them stray quite a bit from the material and try to go their own way, and none are really completely, have fidelity to the original book. Not completely, but it's pretty bad. I don't know about the worst. I always have a hard time saying something's the worst.
I feel like
then I discover something else that's even worse.
The old silent film kind of wanted to emphasize and up the horror aspect.
A little bit, yeah.
Whereas Andrew Lloyd Webber wanted to up the romance aspect.
Yeah.
And I kind of do and don't appreciate that. I love the music to it. It's really beautiful. But there's also this sense of he was taking... In the book, all 3 of our main characters, which is Christine Daze, the Phantom, otherwise known as Eric, and Raoul de Chagny.
Vicomte de Chagny.
Yes. And
I don't know which.
All 3 of them in the book were very kind of innocent and pure characters, more so than their contemporaries.
Mm.
They were these just pure souls, and yet they're in this love triangle thing going on. But you have Christine, who is young, who is very innocent, very impressionable, who is in the grieving process, and that carries through.
She lost her father.
The musical as well. Right.
Yeah.
She's lost her father, and yet her father, as a musician, had promised her that he would send the angel of music to her.
Mm.
And yet she is, she's gone into the opera house, but she's lost all really passion for music. She's lost her spark. She has talent, but she's really not trying. So her patroness, and the person that she was living with, was someone known as Mama Valerius, which the husband and wife, were the ones that had discovered her father and were kind of funding them, the patroness type things. And her father was a famous violinist. I don't know if I said that a minute ago or not.
You didn't mention the violin, but
yes.
Good enough.
So he was a violinist, and she, was a singer. In the original book, she's not a dancer at all. In the stage production, she starts out as a dancer in the opera house, and then kind of gets slotted into the role of a singer.
Right.
So, there's some different variations there. I feel like, Andrew Lloyd Webber was taking a broader cast of characters, and he was kind of condensing it a lot. So a lot of
adaptations do that. They take three characters and make them one.
Right. So you have, instead of Mama Valerius, which is who Christine stays with, who kind of knows about the angel of music that's been teaching her and training her since she entered the opera house, or at least for a few months here, that, he changed that to in the play, she's the chorus master, kind of.
Madame Geary?
Madame Geary, yeah. She is over the dancers and the chorus and kind of behind the scenes. She's got some kind of a role. She's the one that keeps them all kind of in check.
Right.
Whereas Madame Geary in the book was an accomplice of the Phantom of the Opera, but that was because she was in charge of Box 5, which was the Phantom's box. She wasn't over the ballet dancers and all of this. So, he kind of takes and smushes these characters together. And there's also another character in the book called the Persian, who's the one that actually helps Raoul at the end to infiltrate the Phantom's secret underground lair. And they changed that to also Madame Geary. They changed that to Madame Geary.
And sometimes what they do is they take the Persian, make him a French inspector, Ledoux, or something like that, or they'll take...
The Persian is the French inspector. So he was from Persia, in France, but he had followed the Phantom. He was actually the one that helped the Phantom to get free from where he was, and yeah.
And I believe that connection also explains how the Phantom is able to do a lot of his tricks and things like that, is he learned it in the Orient.
Yeah. You get a lot of
the shadow.
His... See, and that's the thing, is he ran away from parents who did not love him, who were scared of him, and actually joined the circus as a small boy of his own free will and learned from them. Whereas in the play, it was like he was captured, and there's more of a level of abuse. Whereas in the book, he was a willing participant in, yes, it was because of the circumstances that he'd been born with, and he'd never known anything but fear.
Yeah.
And revulsion, but also you see this man who had learned how to survive, who was this musical genius, but also just a genius in general. He was an architect. He's, also an assassin who had been in the courts that, of this high lady that, he was her assassin, which is where, he learns, and you kind of see the searing of his conscience that happened. And then, he left that lifestyle because, someone high up decided that he knew too much and that he needed to be eliminated.
Right.
And that's when the Persian, who's the inspector, was, the one who helped him get away then. And they have this kind of mutual respect for each other, but also he's keeping an eye on Eric because he knows what he's capable of. And he's just making sure that this genius stays in check. And, at some point it's like, okay, he's crossing the line here. When he kidnaps Christine, that's when the Persian is like, nope, he's gone too far, I've got to stop him. So you see this entire character that's kind of acting as a conscience for the opera ghost, the phantom, that you don't have in the play.
Right.
At all. And honestly, I think that he's supposed to be represented by the monkey with the symbols that you see at the very opening when they're like lot 665.
Oh, I know.
They're
just...
giving
okay.
Like that's the, as much as I could find that they, that's the nod that Andrew Lloyd Webber gives towards his character, is for some reason this has to do with the phantom. But that's never really explained in the play why that's there.
Yeah.
And why it's at all important. But if you know, the book that he's drawing it from, it's like, oh, there's this source material that he's pulling from that he's trying to give some kind of homage to.
Right.
But, hopefully most people kind of know the storyline. If you kind of break it down, it's a simple story. You have this man who manipulates a young girl into believing that he is the angel of music that was sent to her from her father. She kind of gives him that information to be able to manipulate her by. And then...
he's also manipulating the events that happen in the opera house.
Right.
He's like, you will do my opera when I want. He's not only manipulating her, he's manipulating his...
But he kind of, as all of this is coming to a head, it's like his behavior with the opera gets worse. And you see it, there's a change in the ownership of the opera house and the management. And the new managers aren't willing to kind of keep things status quo. There's no fear, so he kind of has to up the behavior to establish the same...
it's like a dominance
that
game.
He wants, or that he had, because the old owners were willing to give him the salary and keep the box open for him and listen to all of his suggestions and stuff, and the new ones weren't. So there's just this kind of escalation as you have this escalation that's happening with Christine and him kind of asserting, and it really is, I feel like he would have been happy to have had things continue on for longer with her just kind of believing that he's a voice. She'd never seen him. She didn't really, she didn't believe that he was a real man. She thought that he was her angel that, was just teaching her music. But when he saw Raoul, who comes in and, realizes, oh, this is my old friend. And, wow, she's amazing. She's, so incredibly talented. And, I'm so excited for her. And when Raoul steps in, then the opera ghost, the phantom, is jealous of her. And that escalates his behavior to then he reveals himself to her as a man and not as a ghost. And then, the next step that happens, she pulls his mask off. And he's like, okay, now that you've seen my face, you can never leave. So there's just this natural progression, but it's an escalation of behavior that's kind of pushing him to new heights of behavior. And yet there's also this, I don't know, I think that one of the things that most people that watch The Phantom of the Opera, either people are just kind of like, that's weird, I don't really get it. Or people are like, oh, I love it. But there's an empathy and a sadness for the phantom that happens from that.
I think there's an unhealthy attraction because he's mysterious, he's shadowy. There's something interesting about him. I already said mysterious. But there was a thing that happened, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, or whatever, where my experience with it was, girls were enamored, and they did not want Christine to end up with Raoul. They wanted her to end up in the sewers forever,
Which I don't think was
in love with the
ever,
music of the night.
it wasn't ever what was supposed to happen, right?
Right.
You were supposed to be, but, in some ways, this is a Beauty and the Beast story.
Yeah.
This is the idea of, you feel sad for someone that everybody judges as a monster.
Yeah.
And you come to understand that, his heart is actually just as bad, and that's the difference between Beauty and the Beast. For the Beast, it was like her time spent with him changed him, but he was never truly bad as the Beast.
Yeah.
He was misunderstood, he was abrasive, he was rough, rude, but he wasn't actually a murderer. And it's like when you go to, okay, well, but the Phantom was a murderer. And there's this line that you can't cross with empathy, where it's like, we can understand and we can be sad for him. The line that gets me every time is like, my first unfeeling scrap of clothing was the mask.
Yeah.
And he's going, a face that even, a face that even a mother can't love. When he's telling her, just those lines just tear your heart out, You're going, for somebody that was rejected by his own mother, who was forced into covering his face because he was too hideous to be looked on.
Yeah.
That just, I can't imagine how lonely and how sad that was, which is one of the reasons why, one of the big changes that Andrew Lloyd Webber made that I wish that he hadn't made. And I feel like I'm jumping around a little bit, but we'll get back to what you were saying. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
But in the book, in the play, the thing that makes the Phantom change his mind, because, they get to the end and he's kidnapped Christine and Raoul comes and he's trying to rescue her, but the Phantom captures Raoul and, is basically making Christine choose, are you going to make me murder him or are you going to marry me? So he's forcing her into marriage with the life of Raoul on the line. And, obviously Raoul's like, either way you choose, he has to win. And so Raoul's going, no, don't choose me. So you see that contrast of like the selflessness and the selfishness of the Phantom.
Yeah.
Which is important there. But the thing is when she does choose the Phantom and, chooses to have Raoul saved and let go, she kisses the Phantom. And after the kiss is when the Phantom, like, that just breaks him. He's like, no, but that's the first true affection, and this idea that she can touch him and not be horrified by him, that actually changes him, and he goes, no, I'm going to let you both go. I can't go through with this. But in the book, she doesn't kiss him on the lips. She kisses him on the forehead. And that's the thing. And that's just so much more innocent and such a higher level of, like, it didn't even take a passionate kiss. This was not the kiss of a lover, which you see in the play.
That's a motherly, sisterly kiss.
Right. It was just her actually
Familial.
going, you know, I care for you. I have
that would have been
compassion
so much
for you.
better.
Yeah. But the thing is I mean, Andrew Lloyd Webber with the whole, my least favorite part of the play is the song, The Past the Point of No Return. I mean, that's ick, you know, and different versions play that song in different ways. I think we just watched the 25th anniversary version of it, and that one is more, there's more of that seduction and lust element to it than the Sarah Crawford version of that song is.
Sarah Brightman, Michael Crawford.
Thank you.
You bet Sarah / Crawford.
Yes, those
Brightman,
two.
the Brightman Crawford version.
But yeah, in that one, it's like the lyrics are the same, but the emotion that they give to it is very different. Where, you know, in the Sarah Brightman, she's more kind of scared and hesitant, and it's, you know, this act. Whereas in the 25th anniversary, which I don't remember the actress's name. Do you?
No.
Okay. Anyway. But she's playing it very, very flirtatious and like she's in on the seduction.
I thought she was playing a play within a play.
Mm.
And she didn't quite realize that was the Phantom. Or she did know. I don't know.
I think there's a moment at which you hear the Phantom singing versus the one who was supposed to, which the Phantom replaces the actor that's supposed to be in that role on stage. Yeah. But obviously she didn't know what had happened.
He's just misunderstood, murder.
And that's the thing. They kind of push how much he did a little bit more in the play. It kind of just, whereas in the book, like the levels are different of what he actually did and what he didn't do. It's like it's there, and yet it's almost like he doesn't, it's almost like he's blinding himself to the realities of what he's capable of. Because there's, you know, even though he's an adult, there's kind of almost like he was forced into doing things that he never wanted to do, and he's almost kind of compartmentalized and like scared of that part of himself too in the book.
That's
which is
more
not
interesting,
in
actually.
It actually is. You have a lot more, you know, this idea of a man who someone just showing a scrap of affection for completely breaks him. And in the book, he dies of a broken heart after he, you know, receives this kiss on the forehead and lets her go and realizes that, you know, he's never going to have a normal life, which he wanted. In the book, he's going, I've created a mask that will allow me to go out in public. I want to leave the opera house with you. I want you to be, you know, I want us to have a normal life. I don't want to be down here anymore hiding. I want to give all of this up, and I want to come out into the light. The Phantom wanting to come out into the light versus the Phantom in Andrew Lloyd Webber's version that's going, let me show you the music of the night. You know, and then it's like it's a completely different theme that's happening. Whereas in the play, it's very much more kind of simplified into there's this evil villain who is a murderer, a seductor, and he's trying to manipulate this innocent young girl until she's under his spell and past the point of no return. He's trying to show her this dark side of life that he's just enveloped in and capture her. It's like this imagery of like a spider drawing her into his web. You know, it's the dark underbelly of entertainment. And you have this theme of, this masquerade that the theater is representing all that is kind of evil and pretend that has this dark underbelly to it itself.
The theater is the mask, and the horror beneath it is like the sewer underneath. That even under something as gaudy and has a mystique and has a fantastical nature to it, underneath that is just the nasty,
Raoul is
dark.
representing this light that is able to actually rescue her from this evil that's trying to drag her down and give her the normal life.
Yeah.
Which, it's not that clear cut in the book, because the Phantom wanted to leave that too and have the normal life with her. And it just, it's so not as clear cut. You feel more sorry for the Phantom in the book than you even do in the movie. But there's more reason to. It's more complex of an actual story. Whereas in the play, it's just like, why was she even tempted by the Phantom? Where, it doesn't make sense necessarily.
But you see that there's a part where you see that
saying,
she's afraid of him. She's reaching out to Raoul. She wants help.
Yeah.
To get away. So why brought people
and the
so
other thing, in the play, you see Raoul kind of forcing her to stay so that he can catch the Phantom.
See, again, he's a spider too. He and here's the thing too, is I think there's just this dominance play within us, because he's like, you will be mine, and I will have you. And Raoul is kind of saying, you'll be mine, and I'll have you a different way. But he's also going, we can't just run away because I haven't defeated him.
Right.
He'll always be there in the back of my mind, this rival for your affections, this invisible. And it's like, how fragile his ego must be, that he's going to be like, well, I have to stomp this guy into the ground before I can really be yours.
I actually like that he didn't make Raoul a perfect character, because in the book, Raoul's not a perfect character either.
You think that's...
There's imperfections in kind of different ways, but you really do have Christine that's being forced to choose from two very imperfect men in the end.
Yeah. And
a lot of people do come away from this going, yeah, she just shouldn't have ended up with either one of them. But one of the things which, there's a quote.
That's what happens in the 1943 version. She chooses neither the Phantom nor Raoul. She chooses her own path, her own career. Because guess what? Women were doing that during the 1940s, as they were choosing their own career, and liberation.
This right here from the book, I think is a very interesting line. Raoul and Christine are talking about the Phantom. She's actually telling him and explaining. And he says, "You're afraid of him, but do you love me? If Eric was handsome, Christine, would you love me?" And her response is, "How can you say that? Why tempt fate? Why ask me about things I keep hidden deep in my heart, where people always hide their sins?"
What is the sin she's talking about?
Why does she love Raoul and not Eric? And this is the thing that
He thinks it's because he's handsome and the other one's not?
That's what Raoul thinks. And honestly, I think Christine doesn't have a good answer.
To steer him away from that mindset.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is when she actually gets taken by the Phantom, she's kind of content to be there until she pulls off his mask and sees his face and gets scared of him.
It's only later that she's able to see the man behind the mask.
The deciding factor actually does end up being, thankfully, his actions versus his looks. And you do see that, she comes to that conclusion. But at first, the reason she rejects the Phantom and chooses to love Raoul is because one is handsome and one is not. And that's
pretty shallow.
It's very shallow. And I think that's, if you want to give Christine a character arc, that's her character arc. Her actually coming to see the value of the Phantom past his face and to feel love and compassion for him, and yet still reject him and choose Raoul because of his actions. And Andrew Lloyd Webber actually leans more into that than the book does. Is, that actual clear-cut line of, you're evil not because of the way you look, but because of what you've done.
Right.
And that's something that I do appreciate about Andrew Lloyd Webber's version, even though I feel like he really, a lot of times, and as we get into the different productions that he was in charge of, I feel like he cheapens the source material a lot. If you look at Joseph, if you look at Jesus Christ Superstar, if you look at Cats, and we're not even going into Evita, but he takes this really in-depth story and he kind of sometimes just misses what the actual point was. But I feel like the reason
he's got his
why,
own agenda, what he wants to say.
Yeah. But I feel like he does a worse, he misses the point worse on the other ones than he does on this. And this one, it's like, okay, you actually got some of this. I wish that he hadn't quite pushed the angle of, and this is something that, Cinema Therapy's episode was on love versus lust. And that's a very easy thing to do with Andrew Lloyd Webber, is because that's what he focused on, this whole seduction. And, was she even in love with any of them? Like, does this girl know what it is that she's even, feeling or thinking throughout this? It's like she's being entangled in something that she's not really cognizant or experienced or worldly enough to know what it is that's happening to her. And even in the end, when she's escaping, it's like, okay, well, you chose Raoul, but did you know there's a sequel story?
I've heard.
Apparently, it's really bad.
I've heard that there is, but is there an actual musical? But it's not by Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's like somebody else.
I don't know. We'll have to look into that. But I think in the sequel, they actually are portraying Raoul and Christine as having a very bad marriage. And yeah, I don't know. But it kind of makes sense when you look at his character. I think that most people, that actually look at Raoul's actions a little bit deeper don't really end up liking him very much.
Yeah.
And I think that the only reason people like him is because of the beautiful song that he gets. Because of Andrew Lloyd Webber, who really wanted us to like Raoul.
So a lot of these songs, these musicals, can be their own version of manipulation, because the characters and how you see them, if you just take their actions and what they do, and you just mute their song, are you still swayed? And music has the ability to sway and seduce us into certain thought process, and it does it in this too. It's like, we want you to think this certain thing about the Phantom. We want you to be pulled in. We want you to think this certain thing about Raoul. We want you to get pulled in. And it's a manipulation and a leading, as it were. But that's just what I got from that.
I mean, if anything, that really is kind of the danger of the story of the Phantom of the Opera, is because the music is so great that you can tend to go very surface level and miss what it is that you're actually learning. Which is why, when you were talking about these girls being swept away and wanting her to end up with the Phantom and really just loving the Phantom as a character, it's like, yeah, you can love him until you actually say, but he was a murderer, right? Like, can we stop and think about this?
The sad fact is a lot of the fantasy books that we have now. Oh, but he's a mass murderer. He's a dictator. He's all different things. But he's handsome, or sorry, there's something about him, and you're like, how far have we gone? I mean,
I think there's a level of, we want to be able to look at someone and understand the reasons why they've gone to the point that they have, and be able to have compassion for someone that has, because of abuse or, things that have happened to them, have then turned around and, done something then to someone else that's been terrible. And you want to be able to say, I understand why, and, I have compassion on you, and I understand. I don't just look at you and go, you're a horrible person because of what you've done.
Right.
And, in that, it's like, I think that is a godly perspective in some ways. There's a Christian element of being able to look at someone and say, I can understand why, and I can offer compassion and forgiveness. But there's something that the world does, which is say, because of that, we're no longer going to call it a sin. We're going to call you poor, and we'll just forgive you, and, we'll just go on, Whereas when you have God in the picture, there's supposed to be a repentance. There's supposed to be a changing and a turning. There's supposed to be, also a level of accountability where you go, when you've committed a crime, you don't just get forgiven and continue on, and it brings me to mind the whole thing with Mike Winger and the cover-up culture and stuff.
Yeah.
that if you don't know about that, there's a controversy in the church right now with Mike Winger exposing some false prophets and people that have preyed on members of their church in different ways. And then this cover-up culture within the church that wants to say, well, we're just going to forget that all of that happened because they've repented, and we're going to allow these people to continue on ministering, right? And, rather than actually going, because of what they've done, they don't get to be in ministry anymore.
Right.
And, that's where there's this division of, like, in the church right now of, at what point do you actually say, okay, this disqualifies you from ministry because of what you've done, or is, the restoration and restoring people to ministry, like, how much freedom is there in a church for someone to be able to do that? Who gets to decide?
Right.
Whereas a lot of these churches are like, oh, well, we just handled it internally and we carried on because that's what's best. And so, yeah, but that's kind of the same thing of, if Christine had been able to go, okay, well, you did this, and I've reformed you, and I forgive you, and we're going to go and do no more, and you're going to get this wonderful life now with me. Like, that could have happened, right? She made the choice to marry him. If he hadn't have changed his mind, that would have been the future for the Phantom and Christine. If she could have actually gotten past the terror of his face, which in the book, that's a question. Whether she actually was just pretending or whether she had truly gotten past it. Whereas I think in the stage production, it was like, yes, she was forced into it, but she made that choice.
Yeah.
Would she have been able to forgive him for forcing her into the choice? But I don't know. Another question. Bunny trail. Can I bunny trail real quick?
Real quick? Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
I was actually talking about this with our oldest daughter, and we were kind of drawing some parallels between this story and Twilight.
I was waiting for you to get to that.
I knew you were. But, I made the remark where it was like, if we took and we said, well, what is the Phantom of the Opera? What if we had the story of Twilight and Bella had met Edward when he was still in his killing phase? And because that when shortly after he had been changed into a vampire, he rejected Carlisle trying to force him into this vegan lifestyle, right, of living off of animals rather than humans. And
right.
He went out and he just started killing people. And, when Bella meets him, Edward says, well, I've killed people before. And she's like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. But it's like, well, what if he was actively still killing people? Would the story have been different?
Would it have been more like the Phantom of the Opera?
Yeah. But then again, Edward is beautiful. How much of a difference do people actually place on looks when we're willing to forgive people for their sins?
And it depends on what you do with the victim. Because you can take the victim that this was done against and you can say, well, they deserved it because of actions they did. And the thing is, that's what's happening right now. We have people that have committed murders, and you have women with their faces on T-shirts. I'm not kidding. This is the world we live, and that's not it. This has been happening for years. Mm-hmm. There was a woman who was like really in love with the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. She would write letters to him. This is a guy that would stalk women and murder them in the home. And she's like, oh, and writing letters to, and there's this fascination with the darker side of things. And it's always a fascination until you get the darkness that you're after. And it's, when you get caught by the spider, it's not to be the spider's friend, it's to be the spider's prey. Mm-hmm. You get wrapped up just like every other insect. How do you feel about it then? So
the way they excused Edward, though, was that he was stopping crimes from taking place by killing the perpetrator of the crime before they committed the crime. Which brings a whole nother question into place, doesn't it? Because he was reading
He's Vampire Batman.
Their minds and knew that he was keeping people from assaulting women before they did it. So
but a lot of people have bad thoughts, but they don't follow through with it, and they struggle with those things. And you're like, how do you even know they were going to do it?
Does that go back to the whole, if you could kill Hitler as a baby, would you do it?
Right.
It's like, can we kill people for crimes they haven't yet committed? Or do we have to let the people commit the crimes before we can actually judge them for it?
That's the Minority Report question. Mm-hmm. Is were they ever really going to do it if you came and stopped them? So they never really did the crime, they just thought about it. Or they were, but they didn't. But that's the excuse that you give where, what was it? Oh, there was that movie True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. She says, you've killed people. He said, yeah, but they were all bad. So that's the phrase I stick with is, yeah, but they were all bad. So you become judge, jury, and executioner, right. So it's just fine to do. And we talked about that during our comic book episode. But the thing is that's excuse that you give. Yeah, that's your excuse, is you give the excuse that, oh, they were evil, so I can just kill them.
Your perspective. But the thing is a lot of people, when they hear the backstory of the Phantom and they feel all compassionate for him, would actually say that he shouldn't be judged harshly for his crimes either. So then, like, we're full circle back. Do we judge someone because of the crime that they committed and stop them, or do we have compassion and forgiveness for someone?
You can
and
do
allow
both.
them to continue on.
You can have forgiveness and compassion for somebody and hold them to account for what they've done, because we're all held to account for our choices. You have a choice. You're not just led about by the whims of fate. You are the master of your own decisions.
But Edward had a chance to repent of his sins and to stop them and to reform.
Right.
Before he met the girl. The Phantom didn't. We don't know what he would have chosen. Maybe he would have chosen to repent, to move on. Maybe there would have been a growth there. Maybe there would have been, and if he had met Christine, 20 years into the future, maybe his story would have been entirely different. And I guess that's kind of the thing of, where are you in the process when justice catches up to you? And does that actually have a determining factor in what the justice should be? If you take that back to the whole pastors thing, and it's like, oh, well, this person did something 20 years ago, and they were never caught and held accountable until now, but they repented back then privately and changed their ways, supposedly. What happens now? Should they still be held accountable now and pay the penalty for a crime that was in the past? That's hard. Should Edward pay the penalty for his crimes, even though he completely changed his life?
Well, it's hard to say, because you're an immortal being, and these crimes, there's a lot more distance between yourself and those crimes than you might think. I mean, but you've had people that did horrible things when they were young and were put away for decades upon decades. And you hope they would have made better decisions knowing what they know now, but they were dumb when they were young and they didn't do the right things. But you still have to pay for your choices.
But a lot of times it really is kind of one of those where it's like, there's the power of a changed life that makes a difference in how we feel about someone, and our ability to forgive their sins. So,
yeah,
and I think that's, I don't know, that was a long bunny trail, sorry.
That's okay.
But as far as the actual stage production of The Phantom of the Opera,
right,
by Andrew Lloyd Webber, I think that there is probably so much more we could go into, but hopefully we've covered enough.
We covered a very specific slice of what we wanted to talk about, I thought, and we went into that very well.
So yeah, there's a lot that we could say, but I think that as far as those themes and those questions of what did Andrew Lloyd Webber bring to it, he brought some clarity in some ways, and he muddled some other things. And then I think that depending on which stage production you watch, you're going to be able to pull different things out of it. But the long and the short, the music is beautiful. The music can carry you away. I think that when we have somebody that's so skilled musically, there is a danger there of not examining, what is it that this is actually teaching us or saying to us. And yet, I think that the humans, are pretty good a lot of times of like picking and pulling those things out and uncovering. So hopefully, the Phantom of the Opera's been around for a really long time. I think there's been a lot of discussion about the good and the bad. And I think that most people land in a pretty good place with this. As far as, I think that you were saying, is there a danger to the Phantom of the Opera and how much you can get swept up into the, the music of it and the feelings
what
and
you're
emotions.
enamored by,
Yeah. But I mean, I would say I don't think so. I think that it does a pretty good job of drawing this distinction between the darkness and the light. And, even though Raoul is such a flawed character, I think that the music really does kind of give us this choice between light and darkness. And Christine chooses the light. And it was the right choice in the end, I think, that, everybody can kind of see that getting swept up into the dark is not healthy, it's not good. And there were some legitimate reasons why she didn't end up there.
We have unmasked it. We've unmasked this musical. And we have exposed it to the garish light of day. Not garish. We've the healing power of light we've brought to the darkness of the story. And hopefully we've exposed some things about it you haven't thought about before. That's a good thing.
Or maybe just had fun revisiting it.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
It's a fun visit.
Yeah, we're gonna get more into Andrew Lloyd Webber and the way that he kind of twists source material and stuff.
And how the music is probably the most, the most elevated thing about what he goes into. And does he misunderstand the source material while crafting his own tale? Well, we'll see.
Oh, yes. But as far as the fandom, I really do think that this is, as evidenced by how beloved this adaptation is, I think that he did a good job.
I think it's his best musical.
It's his best, yeah.
Some people would say other ones, but this is the one that stood the test of time.
And go down the rabbit hole, if you haven't yet, of just the source material for this, because it is a fun rabbit hole to go down. Just, actually looking at the original book that he pulled this from, because
you're making me want to read it, and it's
an
excellent
deeper story than this, than his play gives it. So there's a lot of stuff you can uncover and pull, and you really can look into, is Christine just this dumb blonde?
Because she's blonde in the book.
Yeah.
And brunette.
Swedish. But
Daze is Swedish. Anyway, continue.
Or is she just this innocent that, didn't deserve either of them? Or, a lot of people end up in a lot of different places with it. But it's kind of fun to peel it back and say, who's the real villain here? Who's the hero? Because you have three, in Andrew Lloyd Webber, I feel like you have three very flawed people. In Gaston Leroux's book, you have three very innocent people that somehow something beautiful ends up happening out of it all, and yet very sad. There's just this, it's a tragic story, but there's so much innocence and vulnerability and sorrow, and just, it's kind of mind-blowing. But the music is also mind-blowing, so I'm not sad that we have that.
But such sweet sorrow is parting. Parting is such sweet sorrow.
Well, that's a different...
I know.
That's a different writer of plays.
Shall we bid? Shall we bid them adieu? And shall we bow and take our
stop
final?
Talking, woman.
No.
All right.
No, it's good.
Well, we will see you guys next week. Hopefully you have enjoyed this, and if you have, give us a thumbs up. All of those things.
Let us know what you think. I find that fascinating. Please do.
All right, we'll see you next time.